Hi, man.
Teacher.
How are you today? How are you today?
Thank
You're good. Why do you look so
Yes.
sleepy? Did you sleep?
Not much.
Not much, okay. And how is your test going? Are you writing tests now?
Yes.
Are you writing tests now? At school? Writing? No, okay. Okay, we're going to do IELTS 13, test 1, part 2, okay?
Yes.
Okay, let me show you. So it says here, we're going to do the writing task 2. Living in a country where you have to speak a foreign language can cause serious social problems as well as practical problems. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this statement? Now, living in a country, a foreign country, where you speak a foreign language, so it's not your home language, it's your second language or your third language, can cause serious social problems and practical problems. I think yes, it can. What do you think? Do you think yes or do you think no?
I
Do
think
you
yes.
think it can cause problems or do you think no, it can't?
Yes. I think it
Yes,
yes.
it can. Okay. Now let's do the outline of your essay. We have to write an essay. So we're going to do the outline of the essay and then we'll write the essay, okay? So your first paragraph is your introduction. Let me write it like that. It's your introduction, your first paragraph, okay? Oh, hang on. Let me write that properly. There we go. Your first paragraph is your introduction. Here you're going to say in your first sentence, you're going to paraphrase the given statement. Remember, we always use the statement and we paraphrase the statement. Then in your second one, you're going to express your opinion. You're going to say, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree. In the third one, you're going to outline what the next paragraph will be about to support you. Outline what the next paragraph will be to support your opinion. Okay. Second paragraph. This is your first supporting paragraph. Okay. Here you're going to say, this is a topic sentence. So here you're going to introduce your first point. Introduce your first point to support your statement. That's the first one, okay? You're going to describe in the paragraph. Second paragraph, you're going to explain the point, what you are making. The third sentence, you're going to present a real life example. You're going to say example. The fourth one, you can oppose a different opinion. You can say it shouldn't work or it can't work or whatever you think. Okay, then you can have a third paragraph if you want to, or you can only have two, it depends on what you want. So the third paragraph will be your, it will also be a supporting paragraph, or if you only have one, then that's fine. It's exactly the same, it's the topic. So we can actually say here, the first, the second, and we can make here the third paragraph. The second and third paragraph is the supporting paragraphs. The fourth paragraph is your conclusion. Here you restate your view and you sum up what you said. You can also make a prediction or a suggestion on your writing. And here, okay, so that's that. Then, this is what you're going to do here. Then you can also, just to get some ideas, a few ideas, we can say the practical problem. What is the practical problem? Communication. It's a communication gap. Okay, so here they say it's a foreign language, it's a second language. So that means there's a communication gap. We're not going to understand each other like we should. Okay, what is the result? The result means confusion or poor service. If I speak Vietnamese with you, I don't know all the words. So we're going to have a communication problem and a confusion. I won't know what you are saying. Okay. Okay, then you're going to give an example. Like an English word is pitch. What is a Vietnamese word? You give a translation example. There can be a social problem with misunderstanding. There can be the result of this is a relationship problem. And then you give an example. Example will be like a gift. I give you a gift, but for example, it can mean poison or whatever. So you give a practical problem, which is the communication gap. You give it the result and you give an example. And then you can give a social problem, misunderstanding, the result of relationship problems. And you give an example. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a kind of idea what you can say. We can say, this is your idea here. We can say, yes, we do agree with the statement. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Because there can be practical problems like communication gap, social problems like misunderstanding, and things like that. Okay, so let's go. Tell me what you think. Then we're going to type your essay. Tell me first what you think. Do you think, do you agree with the statement, yes or no?
Oh, I agree. I completely agree with this statement. Firstly, I think all the shop will speak their native language.
Yes.
Only. So when some people is migrate to their countries, they don't absolutely understand them, lead to the confusion, and it can cause a social problem.
Okay, so remember here. Okay, let's make your sentence here. So this first paragraph, we're going to paraphrase it. Let's paraphrase it. If we paraphrase it, we're going to say, today, many people are living abroad. So it's not your own country, in countries where they have to speak another language. Now we're going to say, now we're going to give our, that's the first one. Now we're going to give our expression. Now we're going to express. When we express, we're going to say, I agree, or my personal opinion, I agree with this. I agree that this can bring serious social and practical challenges. Okay, so that's what we say there. I agree that this can bring serious social and practical challenges. That's your first paragraph. Now you're gonna, and then you can outline what you're going to say in your second and third paragraph. Okay. Now you can say, to begin with, establishing friendships with local people requires more than just a basic grasp of their language. When living in a foreign country, it might not be difficult for you to hold simple conversations about everyday things like weather and food in the native language. However, if you want to become good friends with the locals, you need to be able to discuss topics that are more of an interest. You don't only talk about the weather and the food. Okay, so now you hear this one here. We can say, this one here, we can say, you can also say, you don't have to outline, but if you want to outline, you can say friendships, and not just friendships, but you can say friendships are to build friendships in a foreign language is very important, and you would need to understand the foreign language. So that can be your third sentence here. To build friendships in a foreign country, or to be able to build friendships in a foreign country, you would need to understand their language. To be able to build friendships in a foreign country, you would need to understand the language to do so in order to build it. Now in your second one, you're going to say, so this paragraph here, now we're going to talk about this paragraph, paragraph 2. So your second paragraph, and I'm going to do your third paragraph as well. You put us here. Okay, so your second paragraph can be, now we're going to give examples. So we already started with relationships. To begin with, or to begin with, establishing friendships with local people requires more than just a basic grasp of their language. When living in a foreign country, it might not be difficult for you to hold a simple conversation, or to hold simple conversations about everyday things like the weather, food in the native language. However, if you want to become good friends with the locals, you need to be able to discuss topics that are of more interest and are more meaningful to them. You can't just talk about the weather every day when you see them. You're not going to build relationships like that. you also need to speak in a way that is not critical of the local culture. Otherwise, you may discourage them from interacting with you further. Unfortunately, many foreigners' language skills are not good enough to handle complex conversations like that. Do you understand what I'm saying here? This is our second one. The topic sentence. We explain the point, we present an example. So to begin with, establishing friendships with local people requires more than just a basic grasp of their language. When living in a foreign country, it might not be difficult for you to hold simple conversations about everyday things like the weather and food in their native language. However, if you want to become good friends with the locals, you need to be able to discuss topics that are of more interest and are more meaningful to them. You also need to speak in a way that is not critical of the local culture. Otherwise, you may discourage them from interacting with you further. Unfortunately, many foreigners' language skills are not good enough to handle complex conversations like this. Here, unfortunately, then. Check here, I've got everything. Okay. Now the third paragraph. Now we're going to type the third paragraph for you here. In the third paragraph, now we're going to say another example. In addition, when living in another country, there are many occasions in your everyday life when using the local language is unavoidable. That means you need to use the language for them to understand you. It's unavoidable. In your everyday life, you will have to go to the supermarket and ask in their language for bread, or where's your milk, or do you have a SIM card? So you need to speak their language. Now you're going to say, give an example. For example, in most cities, say for example, China, the bus stop signs are all in Chinese. Therefore, if you are Chinese who can't speak Chinese, it would be very difficult for you to figure out where to get off the bus. The same can be true when bargaining with street vendors and negotiating the rent with the landlord. If I go to Vietnam and all the road signs are in Vietnamese, I'm going to struggle. I won't know where to get off. Then I must be able to speak Vietnamese with people, or Mandarin or Chinese, to know where I need to get off. So you can't avoid it. It's unavoidable. Now you're going to give the example. For example, in most cities, the road signs are all in the native language. And if you can't speak in their language, it would be very difficult to figure out where to go. The same can be true when bargaining with street vendors or negotiating the rent with your landlord. Okay, so here you're giving some examples. The first one you said, today you're opening introduction. Today, many people are living abroad in countries where they have to speak another language. I agree that this can bring social and practical challenges. To be able to build friendships in a foreign country, you would need to understand their language to do so. Can I put this in? Okay, so then they're going to say in your second one, now you're going to say, now you're talking about friendships. In your third paragraph, you're talking about, you're giving an example. In addition, when living in another country, there are many occasions in your everyday life when using the local language. For example, in most cities, the road signs are all in the native language. And if you can't speak in their language, if you can't speak the native language, it would be very difficult to figure out where to go. The same can be true when bargaining with street vendors or negotiating the rent with your landlord. Here, I just want to add a word here, to be able to. Okay. To be able to build. Now we're going to do your conclusion. Where can we type that now? We can type that up here. I will type your conclusion up here. Your conclusion, we will say what we conclude about the story. Conclusion, restate your view and sum up, prediction or a suggestion, okay? So we can say here, in conclusion, now you say again, I agree that language barriers can cause serious social and practical issues. So you are restating your view. Restate, you're saying again, in a conclusion, I do agree that language barriers can cause serious social and practical issues. For one thing, you can't build friendships with the locals with only the rudiments of their language. I'll explain the word now. For another, it is impossible to completely avoid using the local language in your daily life when you live in another country. Okay. In conclusion, I agree that language barriers can cause serious social and practical issues. For one thing, you can't build friendship with the locals with only the rudiments for their language. For another, it is impossible to completely avoid using the local language in your daily life when you live in another country. Here you can also say the local language, native language, if you can't speak the local language, not in their language. Let me change this one for you. I want to change this one. If you can't speak, let's type it here. If you can't speak the local language, oh, it's there. The local language, or you can say native, doesn't matter. If you can't speak the local language, it would be very difficult. Okay, that's that. Now, let's have a look at this word here. Okay, let me type it for you. What do you think rudiments mean? Rudiments. What do you think that means? We can't speak the rudiments of the language. Do you think it's the basic language? It's the basic It's the basic language, the basic principles of the language. It's not just a language, it's the social side as well. It's how you say it. It's the social side of how you say something as well, or how you state it. So it's the principle of it. You understand?
What is critical mean?
Critical?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to tell you now. Principle. It's the basic principle of the language. Where's critical now? Let me type critical up here for you. Critical is like very bad. Just read the sentence for me.
You also need to speak in a way that is not critical of the local culture.
So you need to speak in a way that's not critical. Critical is like bad. It's when somebody is sick and they're in a critical condition, they're almost going to die. So critical means you can't. It's exactly like their culture. For example, if you say a word in your culture, it means good, but in their culture, it's bad. So if you're going to speak in a critical way, they're not going to be friends with you. It needs to be meaningful. You also need to speak in a way that is not critical of the local culture. Critical means it can't be bad towards them. It can't mean something bad, and you still have to have respect. Let's see here what they say before. It's just respect for their language. You need to understand their language. You cannot is not critical of the culture. Critical is disrespectful in this manner. You can't be disrespectful towards their language. Do you know the middle finger?
Yes.
So if I only show you the middle finger, do you think that's bad? Do you think that's good?
I think that
Bad, yes. It means something. It means it's like a swear word. It means something very bad. Okay. So if you show
yes.
it in my country to people, they will actually either grab you and they want to actually hit you, or they're going to be very furious because you're showing them this finger. But in other countries, this finger means hello. So they all show each other the finger because it's hello in their culture. But in our culture, it's not. It means something very bad. So that's why when you go to another country, you have to make sure you know their culture. Because if you go to a country where the middle finger is not hello and you show it to somebody, it's critical. Do you understand the word critical? It's critical that you understand their language. It's important. If you go to China, they never give each other clocks for birthdays. They never give each other a knife or scissors, because a knife means you want to end the relationship. Scissors means you want to cut. You want to cut into your relationship. A clock means you want to end it. So when you go to China and you want to take your teacher a gift, you must make sure you know what you can give her. It's things like that. It's the culture. Now you say here, you also need to speak in a way that's not critical, that's not offensive of the culture. It's offensive. So critical in this manner means offensive. To offend them. You mustn't offend them. You mustn't make it bad or a joke about it. Okay, Let me just take this away. Let me know. It's going to stop, but we can just start again. Okay, let's see if you can read it to us. You know what you need to read. Okay, from here.
Today, many people are living abroad in countries where they have to speak another language. I agree that this can bring serious social and practical challenge. To be able to build challenges. To be able to build friendship in a foreign country, you should need to understand their language to do so. In addition, to begin with, establishing friendship with local people require more than just a basic grasp of their language. When living in a foreign country, it might not difficult for you to hold simple conversation about everyday things like the weather and food in the native language. However, if you want to become good friends with locals, you need to be able to discuss topics that are more interesting and are more meaningful to them. You also need to speak in a way that is not critical of the local culture. Otherwise, you may discourage them from interacting with you further. Unfortunately, many foreign language skills are not good enough to handle complex conversation like that. In addition, when living in another country, there are many occasions in your everyday life when using the local language is unavoidable. For example, in most cities, your sites are all in the native language, and if you can't speak the local language, it would be very difficult to figure out where to go. The same can be true when bargaining with street vendors or negotiate,
Negotiating.
negotiation, negotiating the rent of the landlord. In conclusion, I agree that language barriers can cause serious social and practical issues. For one thing, you can't build friendships with locals with only the rudiment of the language. For another, impossible to completely avoid using the local language in the daily,
No.
daily life when you live in another country.
Yeah. Okay, do you understand what we're saying here?
Yes.
Okay, it's not very complicated. Always try and write 4 paragraphs. Your first paragraph, you paraphrase the introduction and you say why you agree with it. In your second and third one, you give examples. The third one was the practical. So here is your second paragraph. Where you say that you can't only communicate with them in a simple local language. You have to understand the language deeper so you can have deeper conversations with them and build relationships with them. This is your second. That's the communication gap. Confusion and poor service. Example. That's the example that we gave. Only talk about food and weather, which is a big no. You have to have a deeper conversation so that you can talk about interesting things about them. This is your third paragraph here. This is your third paragraph. This is your third paragraph where you talk about the road signs. Where the road signs are in their local language and you won't know where to go. So this is the misunderstanding we talk about. Okay. So if you can't speak to them in basic language, you're not going to be able to make friends. If you can't speak, you don't know, you won't know where to go if it's not in English. That's why English is your first world language, because every country will have, everybody can speak English. That's why English is so important. Because if you go to London, if you go to Australia, if you go to America, it's everything is English. When you go to Tokyo or Singapore or China or Vietnam, your road signs will be in Vietnamese. So if I get there, say I want to come visit your teacher, and how do I get from the airport to you? I won't know where your school is or where her house is. I don't know where to go because I don't know the road signs. I can't read it. That's going to be a big problem for me. The same is true in bargaining. So when I walk in your streets and somebody gives me a hat that I want to buy, they will tell me, oh, it's $10. But to you, they will sell it for $5. But because I'm a tourist, they will say 10. So then I can say in Vietnamese, no, I want it for $5 as well. Same with your rent, where I'm going. If I stay, I need to pay money. But if I speak in the landlord's native language, I can bargain. I can say, no, I want it for cheaper. That's what bargain means. You understand the word bargain?
Yes.
Okay. Look at other words. We're going to read it one more time. When you get to a word that you don't understand, you have to stop. Okay? Stop and tell me, teacher, and I can tell you what the word is. So we're going to read it one more time. And we're going to stop if you don't know what a word means, and I can tell you what the word means, okay? Tell me if there's a word that you don't know. Okay, let's read it one more time.
Today, many people are living abroad in countries where they have to speak another language. I agree with this can bring serious social and practical challenges. To be able to build friendship in a foreign country, you would need to understand the language to do so. To begin with, establishing friendship with local people requires more than just a basic grasp of the language. When living in a foreign country, it might not be difficult for you to hold simple conversation about everyday things like the weather and food in the native language. However, if you want to become good friends with the locals, you need to be able to discuss topics that are more interesting and are more meaningful to them. You also need to speak in a way that is not critical of the local culture. Otherwise, you may discourage them from interacting further. What is interacting?
Okay, now which words don't you understand?
It's interacting.
Interesting? Oh, interacting.
Yes.
Interacting means to speak. Interacting means to speak to somebody. If I interact means I've got a conversation with you. If I don't interact, then I don't say anything back to you. If I interact, I get myself involved and I talk to you. Interact.
Unfortunately, many foreign language skills are not good enough to handle complex conversation like that. In addition, when living in another country, there are many occasions in your everyday life using the local language is unavoidable. For example, in most cities, the road signs are all in the native language, and if you can't speak the local language, it would be very difficult to figure out where to go. The same can be true when bargaining with street vendors or negotiating.
Negotiating.
Yes.
Negotiating means to get a better price, to pay less. That's what negotiating means. You understand?
Yes. What about vendors?
Street vendors are it's like people that sell things on street. They don't have a shop. They're at the street with their baskets and their umbrellas or their tents, and they sell from the street. So, for example, I can make beads and I can make hats, and then I've got like a little place on the street where I sell from. That's a vendor. I don't have a proper shop with walls. Do you understand?
Yes.